The topic of mass incarceration is one of the most controversial topics. As I became more into politics and started paying attention to where some of our tax money was going, I realized that we have a big issue on our hands when it comes to mass incarceration. I have followed and researched organizations that are actively trying to rectify the issue at hand. The United States incarcerates more of its citizens than any nation in the world. The increase in the jail and prison population went from less than 200,000 people in 1972 to 2.2 million people today. This factor has led to unprecedented prison overcrowding and has put major strain on state budgets. To stop mass incarceration, it starts with rethinking who we incarcerate and why. First, I will talk about what mass incarceration is. Second, I will talk about why mass incarceration is bad. Finally, I will talk about why and how we can stop mass incarceration. Mass incarceration is defined as extreme rates of imprisonment and by the concentration of imprisonment among young African men living in disadvantaged neighborhoods. Legal changes have driven the dramatic increase and difference in rates of imprisonment over the last few years. Now that I've talked about what mass incarceration is, I am now going to talk about why mass incarceration is bad. The conditions in jails, prisons, and detention facilities have dramatically worsened over the years. In 2011, conditions became so bad in a facility in California that the United States Supreme Court in Brown versus Plata required the state to release up to 46,000 prisoners after finding that its severely overcrowded prisons and inadequate medical and mental health care was described as incompatible with the concept of human dignity and has no place in civilized society. Prisons in Alabama hold more than double their designed capacity. They have the highest inmate to officer ratio in the United States. The Equal Justice Initiative has investigated overpopulated facilities, and their studies show a significant increase in violence, inmate murders, and corruption. Their discovery of high volumes of rape and sexual abuse of incarcerated women and the physical abuse and sexual abuse of male prisoners have led to federal investigations and federal prosecutions. Finally, now that I've talked about why mass incarceration is bad, I am now going to talk to you about what we can do to stop mass incarceration. More than 70% of Americans agree that it is important to reduce the prison population. Different ways to end mass incarceration have been discussed, like reducing penalties for drug use, more so marijuana drug use, but that only accounts for about a quarter of the population incarcerated. There are 3 reforms that have been researched and studied that can make an impact on mass incarceration. This includes reforming monetary bail, rethinking who goes to prison, and shortening prison sentences. Let's start with reforming monetary bail. 65% of people in jail have been convicted of any crimes and are awaiting trial, which is known as pretrial detention. Pretrial detention can be avoided if you pay the bail, but poor people in jail can't afford the set bail and have to stay incarcerated until their court date. This accounts for 500,000 people in jail. Pretrial detention time should be reserved for people who pose the most danger. Next type of reform would make an impact on mass incarceration in rethinking who goes to prison. Most people think that separating people who commit serious and violent crimes from society is a rectifiable punishment. This punishment is the proper punishment for people who commit a crime like murder. But for crimes like minor drug possession, both crimes should not be treated and punished in the same manner. Lastly, the other type of reform that could make an impact on mass incarceration is shortening sentences. A rule of thumb for imprisonment is to punish the person for that person's crime by the person being deterred from committing the crime, for the person rehabilitating themselves from that crime they have committed. Those purposes can still be accomplished in a shorter sentence. Studies have shown that the longer the sentence, the steady decline there is in the deterrent factor in the system's rule of thumb. a 7-year sentence is just as effective as a 10-year sentence and can save the state more than $100,000 with just shaving those 3 years. It starts with rethinking who we incarcerate and why. In conclusion, it is possible to end mass incarceration. Ending mass incarceration would not only help relieve the prison and jail systems from thousands of people, but it would also help the country and our taxpayers like me and you save billions of dollars. Thank you.